Hello and welcome back to Bookish, and welcome back to my Saturday Hodgepodge, my weekly wrap-up of my reading, booktube stuff, bookish things, anything I want to talk about. Last week, Bethanne Bruninga-Socolar put out a call for help and support for one of our fellow booktubers named Amrita, whose channel is Amrita by the Books, I believe. And Amrita is going through a health crisis having to do with a very aggressive form of cancer, and because of the cruelty and stupidity of American healthcare system, she needs money, and she has a GoFundMe page to which you can donate, which I will leave a link to down below. But in an effort to try to kind of draw more attention and hopefully more help to Amrita's situation and maybe get her some more donations, I thought I would do a tag that Amrita created, and it's called the Book Buffet tag. So I want to do that to start off my Saturday Hodgepodge today, and as you would suspect from the title of the tag, this all has to do with a meal. So all the prompts have to do with different parts of a meal. So question one is appetizer, a short story, novelette, or novella that you wish could be expanded into a full-length novel, get a novel-length sequel. So I'm going to go with the short story, one of the best short stories ever written by an American, A Worn Path by Eudora Welty, which basically involves the story of a grandmother walking tremendous distance through the woods, putting herself in danger to get to town, to get to medicine for her grandson who has a disability. And I just find the story fascinating and incredibly moving, and it kind of ends on a somewhat ambiguous note, and I'd like to know what happened after that. I've always been curious, to know, and I suppose something like that might ruin the story a little bit, but I could always just ignore the thing that came after if it wasn't as good. But that's what I would say for my appetizer. Prompt 2, or question 2, is salad bar. Pick 3 ingredients, plot elements, writing style, tropes, etc. that would be in your ideal book salad. So for me, good characters, good writing, and then something new or different or innovative, or just a little bit more creative perhaps, that challenges the normal form of stories and novels. I like that a little bit. I think that would make it kind of a really good, spicy, various salad, which would be really satisfying for me, so that's what I would put there. Okay, so prompt 3 is DOSA Station, and this says a slim volume that packs a significant punch. I can't think of a shorter novel with a more powerful punch than a book I've mentioned, I think, several times the last few weeks on my channel, and that's At Night All Blood is Black. Just an incredible story, powerful story, innovative story, incredible depth and texture and layer, and all in about 180 pages. That probably would be my answer to any question related to a short book that packs a punch, possibly for the rest of my life. Prompt 4, pasta. A book that brings you comfort and leaves you fully satisfied and content when you're done with it. So what I would say is, rather than a specific novel, I would just say that mystery novels kind of have that impact for me. Like pasta, they're kind of carbs, and so there's kind of energy. And I'm reading A Crooked House as a buddy read with Britta Bowler right now. It's my first Agatha Christie, and that has just been such a satisfying book to read. I'll talk more about it later, but mysteries kind of have that impact on me. They're comforting. I like them. They're satisfying in all kinds of ways. So I picked that for prompt 4. Prompt 5 is beef, a book that is hearty, whether it's long, fills you with gooey warmth, or is just a slog to get through. So for me, I think biographies are probably the most substantial, kind of hearty, satisfying books that I read. Again, without picking a specific one, biographies kind of satisfy that. And even when, as this prompt kind of implies, even when it can be kind of a slog to get through them, as it was at times with Heather Clark's brilliant biography of Sylvia Plath, Red Comet, even then, it is incredibly satisfying to be involved in reading a biography that it goes into that much depth, and where the author cares that much about their subject. To me, there's just something really satisfying about a biography, even if it's not particularly good, to be honest with you. Prompt 6, let's see. Bread, something you and your friends fight over while waiting for your dinner, is the breadbasket. Talk about a book you fight with other people about. And so I don't know that I fight. I mean, I fight on social media quite a bit, but oftentimes not about books. But I think if there's, again, not a book, but an author whose books I find I get the most kind of negative feedback on is if I talk in any way negative about any novel by Cormac McCarthy. I can almost guarantee that there will be people who kind of chime in to register their frustration, to say in effect that I'm wrong, that, you know, etc. And sometimes it's really nice, and very rarely it's not very nice. But that's probably the author that I find myself fighting about most often, which is strange because I admire several of Cormac McCarthy's books and think they're brilliant. I just don't admire all of them, and I don't think they're all brilliant. Anyway, let's see. Prompt 7, Cheese Room, a book with a happy ever after ending. I'm going to go with Panenka. This is the second novel by Irish novelist Ronan Hession. His novel, Leonard the Hungry Paul, was one of my favorite books of last year. Panenka has a happy, but I think realistic ending. It's happy in the sense that not everything works out perfectly, but people are going to try to take steps that make in their lives that make them happier. So I'm going to call that my happy ending book. Let's see. Prompt 8, Chocolate Fountain. When you read a new series or author, do you dip in and out, or do you read it all back to back? I dip in and out. I like to read. When I find a series, even an author that I like a lot, I like to kind of savor and stretch out the reading. For instance, you know, for a long time, and still Ernest Hemingway is one of my favorite writers. I still haven't read all of his short stories because I intentionally kind of save and read one every once in a while. I haven't read his posthumously published novels, or all of them. I probably won't. But in that sense, when I started reading the Patrick O'Brian Aubrey Maturin series, after about the first 5 or 6, then I kind of just slowed down and I read one every summer until I'd read all 21. Reading N.K. Jemison's Broken Earth trilogy, which I did as a buddy read with Lukash from Cruel Reader's Thesis. We read one of those a year, and that's really perfect for me. I kind of like to spread those things out, to dip in and out, and to savor each one. Okay, so then prompt 9 is Who's Invited? Tags and Fellow Friends. So I want to encourage more people to do this tag. So if you haven't done this tag and you're looking to do a tag, please think about doing this one. It's quick, and I like the way the prompts are formulated. And you know, you don't have to mention books, as I did. I mentioned a few books. You can mention genres or things like that, and not all the questions. Some of the questions about us as readers. And if you do the tag, I'd like you to include the information, the link to Amrita's GoFundMe site, which I'll put in the notes below, as well as a link to her channel. And you know, I thought about tagging specific people, but that would, I think, kind of, given the nature of why I wanted this tag, perhaps create a feeling of a moral obligation. And while I do want people to go to Amrita's GoFundMe account, and if you can contribute any amount of money that's possible, and I would like for people to do this tag and to spread the tag and to subscribe to her channel, all that stuff, I don't want to kind of create this moral obligation. So I'm not going to tag anybody specifically, but you know, if you're out there and you have a channel and you want to spread the word, please do the tag and include the information about Amrita's GoFundMe account. Anyway, so I wanted to make sure that I did that. The second thing I want to do is I just want to clarify 2 things from my video, from my 26 random questions video. There were 2 things in there. One, I think, had to do with pop culture references in literature. And people pointed out quite rightly, this is one of those things where, you know, I just kind of came up with an answer that was relatively flippant and said, you know, I don't really like pop culture references in a work of literature because I think they kind of date that work of literature and make it feel weird at some point when you're reading it, perhaps in the future. And people rightly pointed out that, you know, writers from Dante to Trollope, etc., have been doing this for a long time, and yes, that's true. And to be honest with you, when it happens in a book like that, mostly it just washes right over me. I don't pay attention to it. If there's an annotation about it, I certainly will look it up. Occasionally I look them up on my own, and sometimes, you know, I just ignore them. I mean, in a sense, Joyce's Ulysses is essentially just a lot of these kind of pop culture references, or cultural references to Dublin, in which on the day in which that novel is set. So, you know, I don't necessarily think that that's what I meant. It just seems like to me that a lot of times, and this is my attempt to clarify and hopefully not have, or to make this clear. By the way, any confusion is my fault, not yours. But in an attempt to clarify that, what I mean is specifically things like a novel, a contemporary novel, which talks about, you know, would say something like, this character was like Joey from Friends, or this situation was like, you know, or he thought of, or the character thought about this like these characters in Sex and the City thought about something. And so while those are pop cultural references, they do seem a little different than the pop cultural references that took place in literature of the past. The second thing I want to talk about was address what I said about cursing. Do I swear too much, etc., and then kind of, do other people swear too much? I would just say, if you got the impression from my answer that I think that there's just something inherently intellectually weak about swearing, I'm telling you I don't think that at all. If anything, the opposite. I think that curse words, as I said in the video, curse words can be the actual perfect word, and I don't see any reason to limit our vocabulary in any way, shape, or form. If that's the right word for the situation, then it should be used, because it can spice up conversations. But I did mention that I don't curse here or don't use a lot of swear words. I have, but don't use a lot of swear words very often on my YouTube channel, because I don't want to offend people in the audience whom that might offend. And that's a personal thing. If you swear in your videos, I promise you it probably doesn't have any impact on me. It doesn't register. I don't go, oh, well, you're not as good as me. It just has something to do, probably maybe it's a generational thing, or just, what was considered good manners, which were really restrictive and repressive when I was growing up. But anyway, that's kind of what I was getting on about there. And then I just want to finish with doing a reading check-in. So since we last talked, I finished Get a Life, Chloe Brown, a contemporary romance novel, which really kind of made the rounds here on BookTube. It's by an author named Natalia Hibbert. I believe that's her first name is Natalia, but her last name is Hibbert. And I finished reading that, and this was a book recommended to me by Kazan from Always Doing. And Kazan has created a set of videos in which he explains kind of ideas and tropes and categories of romance novels. And that was really helpful, and Kazan was nice enough to answer some questions I had. And I will say I had fun reading that book. It was fun. Now, the conventions of the romance genre definitely are present. And I was talking with Britt about this talking about mystery novels, which I'll talk about here again in just a minute. That if it's done well, and if I'm having a good time reading, if there's something satisfying with the reading, I don't mind that I can go, okay, well, this is an obvious, convention of romance or mystery or whatever. In this case, the male protagonist in Get a Life, Chloe Brown, a man whose first name is Redford, I just forgot, Redford Sampson, something like that. I just forgot his last name. Is like an incredible, like the ideal man. And in a Voxer to Kaz and I pointed out, this seems like an impossible human being to exist, but of course that may be true. That is a convention of romance novels, and if he's unrealistically portrayed, in my opinion, women have been unrealistically portrayed by men and not in fiction for a long period of time, and it really isn't that unrealistic. It's more the combination of all the things which kind of made it go, is there any really guys like this? But it doesn't affect my enjoyment of the story. I enjoyed the book a great deal. I will say the descriptions of sex are clear and oftentimes graphic, but that didn't really bother me. And I just had a really fun time reading it. I can kind of, I read a Regency romance last year as a part of my effort to read, outside my comfort zone. And I think that if I'm going to read romance, that contemporary romance seems more like my thing. And Get a Life, Chloe Brown has great representation of people with chronic illness and chronic pain and what their lives are like, and I think kind of how a view perhaps on how they wish to be treated by the people around them. I really enjoyed the book, and I thought it was good. I had mentioned that I'm doing a buddy read of Crooked House by Agatha Christie with Britta Bowler, and I've just been thoroughly enjoying that. And she and I have both said, in our Vox mentions, point out how much we can see Christie at work here, creating the story within the confines perhaps of that mystery novel structure, but that doesn't make it less enjoyable. In some ways, for me, with a mystery novel, and maybe if I read more romance, the same thing would be true with romance novels. But even though I know what's happening, it actually gives me a greater appreciation for it when it's done really well. When those conventions and the standard ideas we have about how these novels are supposed to be structured, when it's handled really well, really deftly. I think Britta mentioned as being, you could tell that Agatha Christie was really comfortable in writing this, that she was in command of the story and her ability, etc., and her skill and her talent. And you can really feel that. And so in some ways, when I recognize those conventions of genre, in a book like Crooked House, it actually increases my enjoyment, increases my appreciation for what the author has done, that they've created something that is still interesting and fun and enjoyable and satisfying to read, even though I know what they're doing. And that's true. So we're about halfway through with Crooked House. We'll have our third check-in on Sunday and be finished on Wednesday. I'm also buddy reading Mrs. Dalloway by Virginia Woolf with David, who is the husband of Hannah from Hannah's Books. We are checking in once a week. We had our first check-in last Sunday. We'll have our second check-in this Sunday. And I just, the first 40 pages of this just completely, just seemed like a staggering work of genius. I think that's the name of somebody else's book, probably David Foster Wallace, if my memory serves. But it just was really impressive in the way in which Woolf handles what, for lack of a better term, I'm going to call stream of consciousness. Now, and here with Woolf, the stream of consciousness, or our awareness of consciousness, it moves from person to person really quickly. It's not like Faulkner, in which we're in the head of one character at a time, and each character has their own chapter or their own set of chapters. We just ping pong from one mind to another, and it's a street scene, and we kind of get this impression of lots of stuff happening on the street. There's a skywriter, there are all these people, and in this way we're kind of introduced to the main characters, I think, of the story, and some of the subsidiary characters. At the same time, we're getting the viewpoint of lots of different people from inside the way they see things and how they're experiencing things, and it was just great. Looking forward to checking in with David about pages 40 through 90 on Sunday. That's been really good. Really great experience. And then when I finished Get a Life, Chloe Brown, I picked up Normal People by Sally Rooney, which I had mentioned to. I'd actually started reading in November, and so I picked this up with the goal of finishing it relatively quickly, and that's going well. I've got about 90 pages left. I should finish this. Maybe by the time you're watching this video, I should have this finished, and I'll give you my impressions of Sally Rooney either next weekend on Saturday, or maybe I'll do a whole video about Sally Rooney sometime, or my impression of this book by Sally Rooney sometime next week. I would just say that the strength of this book to me are the characters. I just did that tag about what would be in my salad at my buffet, and writing would be one, and characters would be one, and something new and innovative. And I would say of those three, this book satisfies one of those three so far. I'm kind of looking forward to seeing how it all works out. Not necessarily how the plot works out, beyond just how the plot works out and how that affects my opinion of the book. Anyway, and how new and innovative it actually ends up being. I will say I have a book which has lots of blurbs and stuff like that, and while I'm not saying I'm not enjoying the book, I'm not saying I don't like the book, and I'm withholding judgment. I will say so far there's little in the book which I think justifies the praise that's in these blurbs on the cover. That doesn't mean the book's bad. It just means it may not be the single greatest work of literature written by somebody in their 20s, since The Great Gatsby. But I will withhold judgment there. Anyway, there you go. There's my Saturday Hodgepodge for this week. I look forward to your comments in the comment section below. And as always, thank you for watching.